Oh, g'day everyone, and welcome to a Brownlow edition of the CrowCast. I forgot what that bloody name was. It's been that long. It's been a few weeks since we've joined each other on this cast, and I've missed you terribly. But it's great to be here on Monday night, Brownlow night, obviously, kicking off the Grand Final week, and lots to talk about. A few things been going on with the Crows as well. And joining me, of course, to discuss all of this is my partner in crime, Macca. How are you, sir?
Travelling very, very well indeed, sir. Yep,
Now,
had a very nice feed of whiting for tea and feeling good.
No one actually asked you about that. People might notice that we're lacking a few graphics here. One of my hard drives died when I went to boot it up. So I'm going to try and find another graphic while we're just chatting away. How you been, mate?
Yeah, look, I've had my recent test about a week ago, and
Yeah.
I'm still in remission, so all good.
Stuff. Beautiful stuff.
I'm planning to live for another 100 years, mate.
Yeah. Well, we can only hope.
Well, that's all you can do.
We can only hope. No, that did work. People might have to put up with a black background tonight. What we might actually do is put the... that's a good idea. Why don't we just do this? We can actually, on the fly, we can just, we'll just do this. Did you go to the SANFL Grand Final, Mac?
No, look, honestly, I have to say, I watched it, but every year, my interest in it just fades just that little bit more. And
no, I thought it was good.
No, look, I'm not saying the game wasn't good, but I don't know. It's just you watch it all year at a certain level,
yeah.
And then when you go back and you don't watch SANFL. Well, I don't until it's finals time, and the drop off is really noticeable.
Oh, look, mate, I actually I went. Obviously, I'm a Sturt supporter, so I was disappointed with the outcome. But I actually found it quite enjoyable, to be honest with you.
I will say the Woodville West Times when I would go then, but apart from that, no interest.
Yeah, no, it's the base played really well.
I think it was a given they were going to win it, mate.
Well, I mean, after seeing them pretty much put Adelaide Crows away they put Adelaide away in the semi, didn't they? I can't remember. Bloody hell.
Whatever it was.
I watched them a couple of weeks prior, and I thought, they're pretty bloody strong, and it turned out that way. They were too big, too strong for Adelaide, and they never really. Sturt were never God, how am I going, Mac? Sturt were never really able to get into the game. They didn't have any composure. It was pretty one-sided. But I was lucky enough to be invited into a corporate box, so I wasn't terribly unhappy.
Oh, you'd probably go for a corporate box, mate.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, plenty of that was going on. There we go. So I've manufactured something on the fly while we've been crapping on, Mac. And it's the tracker. And Christian Petrarca in front at the moment, mate, 15 votes.
Yeah, look, he's also got a poll quite a few towards the end of the year because when Oliver was injured, he racked up quite a few threes. He could be a bit of a surprise here.
Oh, maybe. I don't know.
He's going to whack out some threes towards the end.
Yeah, possibly. I don't know, Mac. I'm not quite as convinced as you, but you never know. Funny things have happened.
I think there's only three that could possibly win it logically. And that obviously Dacos, obviously Bontempelli, And what's the other? Oh, the one we're just talking about, Petrarca.
Yeah.
Lockie Neal's he's gonna rustle up quite a few votes, but I don't think he'll get enough to win it.
Nick
I don't think
Nick Dacos is sitting there on 13. I think he's going to be the one.
He doesn't vote. Well, he's got no votes for the last four rounds, though. He can't get any last 4 rounds.
I know. What round are we up to? Doesn't tell me on the tracker.
Damn if I know.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Round 8 by the looks of it.
I've been so lost. I've had so many bloody ads and diversions. I've lost count of where we're up.
Well, that's why we put this together. The Brownlow count is as boring as batshit, in my opinion. And we only really give a damn about who's winning. Yeah. Oh, what's going on here? I just had to refresh that. There we go. Petrarca. There we are. So while that's all going on, been a little bit going around the traps trade-wise. Macca, have you heard anything in particular?
Well, our main one so far that have been open, we failed with. Obviously the Sydney lad, who's a very good lad, he would have fitted very nicely into our side.
Which one's that? Hayward.
Hayward, yeah, he would have fitted beautifully into our side. Hayward he's a very, very talented footballer. He also can substitute in the mids there for a while as well, and he's a pretty good size as well. So, yeah, we were pretty keen to get him, and he would have been very good. We were sniffing around at Cox down at Freo, but that's gone as well.
Were we though? I don't know whether we were.
Well, put it this way, I think perhaps more supporters were probably than the club, but there's a lot. I think so. There was a lot of talk about it, but I never ever saw much from the club.
No.
Yeah. And the bloke from Essendon, well, he would have been good for us, but
no, he was never coming. I keep telling you that he was never coming.
Yeah,
Redmond was never coming.
You said that from the word go, and you were proven to be correct.
Yeah. Little bit of weird talk about us being in play for Gold Coast pick 4.
I don't think that's weird. I think that's factual. I think that for us to be even talking about taking Shoal onto our books, we're talking about pick 4.
It's an interesting one because it's probably a salary dump situation.
Absolutely. Because I could put you out there and you'd play with more intensity. You mightn't be as talented, but you play with more intensity than him. He's got a lot of talent, but he's just so casual. He just doesn't give 100%, and not the type of player that I think is going to fit into our side at all. But I think that we're prepared to sort of, if you like, have a dead contract if we could get hold of pick 4. Because, the two young Tasmanian midfielders, one of them at least will be available at pick 4, and both of them are quality.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how I see it getting done.
Oh, well, no, it's pretty easy. We would give them pick 9 plus. First of all, Duday's going, and I am dead set sure Duday's going. And
no doubt about that.
And and I am pleased to see that Sydney's a new starter in the chase, and I'm pleased to see that Collingwood are in the chase because that does bump up the price.
Yeah, and
we'll get a good second rounder for him. And we've already got 2 second rounders. So
So what do you reckon? Band 3 for Juday, which is what's that? End of second round. Band 3. Band 3. That's end of. Band 1 is. Band 2. I reckon band 3, same as Crouch. I reckon.
Yeah, if he gets the same as Crouch, we'll be happy with that, and that will give us 3 very good second round picks to go along with our pick 1. And usually you've got to give at least a 50% margin, or maybe even a bit above, if you're going to get a pick 4. So that's worth about 2,000 points. And I we can easily muster up 3,000 points if we went even that far. and still have a pick left over. So I think that if we can't get a ready-made player in the draft, we must get one of those two midfielders, and that's why I think we are going very, very hard for that pick 4.
Now, well, I mean, we won't be the only ones, that's for sure.
Oh no, I know they're coming from all directions, but I reckon we've got the best range until this hand out to North Melbourne.
Yeah, that's the worry. You know, have they finalised their charity to North yet? Is that all been finalised? I know they've put that lad on the bloody NGA list for them.
Yeah, what they're getting they're getting end of round first round pick. So if in theory pick 19, but that'll blow out. But in theory pick 19. Plus they're allowed to have 2 extra rookies. And next year, they're going to get 2 end of first round picks.
Are you serious?
No, I'm serious. And on top of that, it says to be reviewed. In other words, to be theoretic. In theory, if they were to go really well, they might not get them. But how can you say to be reviewed and yet they're allowed to trade them this year?
Oh, my God. Seriously.
Look, the AFL is a disaster. They weren't interested when Adelaide were at the bottom, and we were rubbish for a couple of years there. Not even a thought of giving us a crumb. Not a thought. And look at West Coast. West Coast bottom.
But hang on, Macca. North didn't even finish bottom.
No, they didn't. They didn't finish bottom.
They didn't even finish bottom. What the hell is going on?
And they played some excellent games where they just faded out in the last quarter as well. They weren't absolutely... Now, they didn't win a lot of games, that's true. But they did play some very competitive games, which they ended up losing. You know, when you consider the disruptions they had with the coach and all that sort of business, I mean, you've got to take that into account as well for their performance. And so, really, it's a real charity situation.
That's disgusting, Macca.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see who this, whoever's made this decision, who they bloody barrack for. I mean, it's just, I can't believe that you can actually give them virtually 3 end of first rounders this year, because you're giving them 1 definite and 2 to be reviewed next year, but you can trade them this year. That's 3.
I mean, that's just dead set cheating.
Well, of course it is. That's the way they operate.
That's the strongest charity package any club's ever had, isn't it? I can't think of a stronger one.
No, nobody's ever had 3 first rounders. No.
Yeah, and as Matt points out in the chat, they're going to get a highly inflated compensation pick for McKay. Highly inflated. There's no way he is on the same level, in my opinion, as Duday in terms of what they should be getting as compensation, and yet they'll get a first rounder for him.
Well, at their best, I don't think he was as good as Duday.
Oh shit, no. But he's a big tall lad, so there's a bit of that. So I can understand a band 3 or a band 4, but they'll give him a freaking band 1 the way it's going.
Well, it depends what they do with the contract. You know, if, for example, it is rigged. Because you take Danaher, for example. He got at that time, $750 over 3 years, which at the end of the first year was then smoothed over 5 years.
Yeah.
So, you know, we should have done the same thing with somehow.
Unbelievable. Just a note on the ticker, Geordie Dawson's up to equal third. Just polling a couple of best ons there. So we got Lockie Neal on 17, Petrarca on 16, Dacos, Dawson, Anderson on 13. Anderson, a bit of a surprise, but that's probably well deserved. Bontempelli, a little bit lower than I expected, but he'll come home like a train, Bontempelli, won't he?
Yeah, he's got some biggies coming up in the last half of the season. Probably the last 6 to 8 games, he played some absolute rippers. He's got at least his six best to come. So that's gonna.
I reckon you're right, Mac. I reckon he could come from the clouds. Lachie Neale, I think, tailed off in the back half of the year from probably the last 3 or 4 games. So he might be vulnerable. Petrarca obviously still polling well.
Yeah, Butter's not polling as well as people thought. But then if you look back to last year, he played pretty well last year, and he only got 1 vote last year. He will do better in the second, as it goes on. But he also had the patch there where he was injured and didn't play a game. So I think you could rule him out already as a chance for the medal. Definitely.
Yeah, I think so. So anyway, back to our situation. Now there was another player that was being talked about. Hayward, we've covered.
Yeah, there's a couple. There's another couple.
Burgess, that's the one.
Burgess, yeah. Look, never really been a fan of Burgess. He's tall. You say that for him. I think he has played at both ends of the grounds though. I know he's playing as a forward, but I think he has played in defence. I may be wrong, and I'll be corrected out there if I am wrong. But I vaguely remember him playing. But no star. But I think probably we're looking. If we do pick up something like a Burgess, it'll be more in desperation and to have a good size reserve. Put it that way.
Yeah, bit of talk about Elliot Himmelberg going back to join his brother at GWS. So obviously that'll leave us a little bit short on tall options, Mac, tall backup. It looks like they'll probably keep Strawn on. Still, we've done our delistings. Our delistings from memory were...
Yeah, I can tell you those. Yeah, they were Haitley, Brown, Newchurch and McPherson.
Yep.
And there's only 3 uncontracted players at the moment. That's McAdam, and he's going to Melbourne.
Yep.
So there's got to be a trade there as well.
Yep.
Duday, uncontracted, and I think will leave. And Borlase, his situation will depend on what the other trades bring. He's in other words, if we actually can bring in other players, Borlase won't get a contract. As they say, he's pretty water for the moment. So
he'll go as a delisted free agent. I would have thought. I don't reckon there's a trade there.
Oh no! We're not talking about we're talking about trading him. He's sitting there waiting to see whether we give him a contract or not. If we don't bring in enough players to fill our squad and with draft picks, etc., if there's a spare spot, then he'll get a contract. If there's no spare spots, allowing for who we either bring in or what draft picks we want to use, he's gone. So he's in a bit of a hold pattern at the moment. So look. He had a great debut and a shocking second game, so he was a bit of both. I think he's just a little bit too slow for AFL footy, but again, it could be, as I said, it will depend on the circumstances of who we get, if anybody, and how many draft picks we want to use.
Yeah, look, I think we know his limitations, and that's fair enough. I think. He's a very good SANFL player. I don't think he's necessarily an AFL player, but probably there's a list there that could do with some sort of backup. Shane McAdam's the interesting one. I had every understanding that he was going to go back to WA, and for him to go to Melbourne, I can understand why Melbourne won him after their finals efforts. But I'm surprised he wants to go there. I guess it's a premiership shot.
It is interesting, isn't it? I don't know whether he was ever around when Goodwin was around. I don't think he was.
No.
So, no, I meant when the Goodwin, before Goodwin was appointed Melbourne coach. He might have been hanging around the club, but I don't think there's any real connection there. So I think it's because of their finals performance, they, in spite of all the talent they've got in there, they didn't perform all that well in the finals and in terms of their forward line. And their forward line was really what cost them winning the premiership.
Yeah, 100%. And they relied terribly on Bailey Fritsch, and they just need someone a little bit more dynamic. What are you doing with your bloody remote?
Well, this fucking thing, pardon my language.
Hey! Jeez. Come on.
This Google Assistant keep coming up all the bloody time when I don't want it.
Oh, Macca, nothing's changed. So what do you reckon for McAdam? They obviously want him. So he's not contracted, so we don't have a huge amount of leverage. I reckon anything probably around about, what have Melbourne got? Anything around about 30 is probably fair.
Well, they've got something around about the late 20s. That bloody Google Assistant's come up there again, mate. I'm trying to watch the damn bloody Brownlow background.
I can't hear it, so you just ignore it, mate, because we got a show to do. Sorry.
Yeah, my poor old missus is trying to watch it.
Well, give the remote to your poor old missus. Get yourself organised.
Mate, you can't even fucking operate a remote.
Oh, stop with the language. Bloody hell.
Sorry about that.
God, Jesus. Okay. So, McAdam, Melbourne has 26, I think. Something like that. That's probably reasonable.
They've got a late 20, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably. I don't think that will actually be too hard to get done. I can see that getting done pretty quickly. The only thing will be if they try to work some other trades into it, but I think it's pretty much a straight pick.
Yeah.
So really, of the other D-listees, I don't think there can be anyone with any complaints. Tyler Brown had a good, solid SANFL season, but that's not what he was brought in for. So, I don't know what they saw in him, Mac, to be honest with you.
He actually had one good game last year for Collingwood, which he was a big body midfielder, and he had one which I thought was a breakout game for him, where he had, I think, about 23 disposals, something like that for him.
Yeah.
And I think they probably thought they could improve him, but and he did play in the round one, but he wasn't. He didn't really improve. In other words, we didn't improve him. He just stayed at the level that he was listed at.
Yeah, which is the level he was at Collingwood, really.
Yeah. Not his fault, it's just how it is.
No, just how it is. Can you see... It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Elliott going up to GWS. I can see that happening.
I think he will, but it's a question of what do you think we'll get back for it, Pete? I mean, it depends on what we would like and what they're prepared to pay.
Elliott, I don't care what anyone says. Elliott had a very, very, very good second half of the season in the SANFL. A very, very good back half of the season. He's a tall bloke and he's contracted.
Well, yes. Well, that actually, the contracted part probably adds a little bit too.
Absolutely, it does.
That might even squeeze a second rounder there.
I think anything less than a second rounder for Elliott is a loss for us.
So we come back to again what we might hold. We've got picks 9, 20, 23 and 48 at the moment. Mm-hmm. If we get in a couple of picks around about the high 20s, 30 mark, that means we would be holding first round pick and 4 second round picks, which is pretty good stuff, and pick 48. Now, we're not going to take that many players in the draft, so obviously we're going to do something with the extra draft picks, whether that is for a trade for a player or whether it's a trade for a pick. It'll be one of the two.
Well, certainly over the last couple of seasons, we've had a player in mind. obviously, if the troll thing is a thing, then there's going to need to be some picks involved in that, obviously. So because the draft itself is touted to be fairly weak, nothing past about 7 or 8 that you really want to get too excited about this season. They say that often, and there's always gems down the middle of the draft, but in terms of top end talent, there's probably only 4 or 5 that everyone's really keen on, and to be able to get into that top 4 would be amazing from our start of the period position, which was pretty soft, really.
I think this is a situation very similar to what Port Adelaide found themselves in when they did so well to get Rosie and Butters. I'd like to see our people be smart enough to trade and get into a situation where we could get into that position. Instead of having one draft pick, which are 9, which will blow out to about 11 or 12, probably, and then having, say, up to 4 second rounders. I just really would rather have a quality pick and a quality second rounder and an upgrade of a rookie or something like that.
Yeah, Vardy in the chat saying he doesn't know where Troll fits in. I think he fits in with a pick. I don't think we give a shit about where he fits in.
I think that's the price we're prepared to pay to get hold of pick 4, because we will definitely really trying to get hold of one of these 2 midfielders.
Yeah, and obviously we're going to have Mac. Obviously, we're going to have a bit more of a considered look at this when we do our draft and trade show in a few weeks' time. But it's interesting to see what's been floated around, up until now, and obviously once the grand final's been decided, then there'll be a bit more scuttlebutt, I'd imagine.
Yeah. Now the interesting thing is that I'll get back to McAdam. I forgot to mention this before. We have asked about Petty, who Petty would be just the right type of player to bring into our club, because he's a guy that can play forward, he can play back, and he's tall, and he can play footy, and he's a South Australian boy. And I think, we've made overtures for it, because we're saying we want a player, we're not a pick. That's what we've said to Melbourne. We want a player, not a pick. And obviously, that's one of the players that we have nominated, and I think they've said no. But the thing is, I think it's an interesting thing. I think we've got the leverage here in the sense that you say he's uncontracted. They really do need something in their forward line. And from their point of view, where they sit, they can't use the pre-season draft. And if we say, look, we're prepared to let him go into the pre-season draft if you're not prepared to cough up a reasonable contribution towards getting McAdam. So I would, that's the way I would handle it. And maybe they don't go that way and they do give something else. But that's who I think they're trying to get targeted anyhow.
Look, and maybe that's where a couple of the second rounders might come in, because, Petty's contracted, McAdam isn't. And Petty's a required player. I mean, you could argue that McAdam is too, but, we haven't tried that hard. It's going to need Shane and something to get Petty across, I think.
Yeah, and you might be right. That really would be a very good deal for them if they got McAdam and a second rounder for him, or Petty. That would be very good. They might not want to lose him, but so we said McAdam and Hamill for Petty. Well, I'm not sure they're after Hamill, but
no.
Look, it'd be interesting to see how good we are. And sometimes, we've done very well. In the last 2 years, I think we paid a little bit too much for Rankin, but the guys showed that he's worth what we paid. Dawson was an absolute steal. That was a very, very good negotiation that year.
Yeah, well, I don't think Petty is a bloke we had been targeting. I think that's just sort of come up in dispatches, and It seems to have a little bit of legs to it, but I wouldn't have thought a bloke contracted to 2025 would have been someone we would have been trying to pry out. So, perhaps there's still someone else. I actually am surprised that we didn't get Hayward. I thought that was the one that we were going to get. I was a big go for Sam Flanders, and I reckon Hardwick coming to Gold Coast probably put paid to that, because I think we might have been a bit of a show before Hardwick came along, because I don't know whether Stuart Dew was a massive fan of Flanders, and he had a fantastic end of the season once Dew got the flick.
Didn't he? Yeah, I think you're quite right. I mean, if Dew had stayed on as coach, I think he would have been a target, no doubt about that. But I don't think he'll be available now. I think he'd be very happy.
He's re-signed now. That's off.
Off. Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Just an update on the Brownlow: Petrarca on 19, Neil on 17, Dacos, Taranto, and Anderson on 16, Cripps, Bontempelli, Butters, and Merritt on 14. So Geordie just dropping out. I note one of the games, Geordie had 33 touches, didn't get a vote. Sloan got 14 touches and got a vote, Mac.
I can't believe that. That is ridiculous.
And just as we're speaking, Neil back in front. This is going to be a tight one. Neil back in front on 20.
Yeah.
I reckon they're both going to be run over by bloody Bontempelli, Mac.
Well, I've rewritten off Butters. I'm written off Dacos now.
Dacos 16.
Yeah, but because he doesn't get polled in the last 4 or 5 games. He should be getting.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I don't think he's going to win it. It's interesting because he was red hot favourite, and I don't think he's going to win it now. But Butters definitely, he's definitely not going to win it. So, of the ones that were regarded as the top 4 chances, you've got Petrarca, and he's performing very well, and we know he does poll very well towards the end of the season as well with Oliver out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's a real danger. And you think Bontempelli might charge home with a bit of a late charge as well, because I reckon he's good for about another 6 threes or something like that, or close to that. So, yeah, I'm thinking that the original favourite boys are, Dacos, Butters. I think I've ruled them out now.
Yeah, if I was to put money down at this point in time, it would be on Bontempelli, I reckon.
Well, I think, the odds would be tighter, but if you could get like 3s or 4s, I'd back both him and Petrarca.
So, Mac, just talking about the finals as we wait for the Brownlow to chug along, there's always one thing in my opinion, if the Crows aren't in the finals, there is nothing better than Port Adelaide going out in straight sets. And just the icing on the cake was the fact that they'd already signed Kenny on the back of his record-breaking streak. And didn't they just fluff their lines up on that one? And to hear David Koch on 5AA trying to explain it and tripping over himself every 5 seconds talking to Willem Pembo on 5AA. If you haven't heard that interview, go back to AA's website and check the podcast. It's a classic. It's a classic.
Well, you have to listen to it. Look, it was the gift from heaven. We got 2 gifts from heaven. First of all, Kenny got re-signed, which means that he'll never win a flag. And then the other one is that, and re-signing him in August before the final. Gee whiz. After you've been there 11 years and then they bomb out in straight sets. I mean, that is stupidity. And that really says to me that Koch has got too much power in that club, and because what he did was illogical, absolutely illogical. If any common sense would have said that, Kenny, your future depends on where we end up this year, and to fail again in straight sets, I think after 11 years he's had his chance.
I can't think of another coach that has been granted a 2-year extension after such a record, Mac. I mean, yes, he's got a good home and away record, But their mantra is that they exist to win premierships. And it was just hilarious to see Kosh backtrack on that and talk about their home and away record and all the rest of it. And just absolutely ignore the fact that they are absolutely hopeless in terms of finals. Their finals record under Hinckley is atrocious.
He made a fool of himself. He really did make a fool of himself. They actually, and it's an interesting thing, Port Adelaide. I think they need a bit of a clean out on their admin level, in my opinion. Certainly they've got to replace Koch. I bet he's an embarrassment, I reckon.
Well, yeah, they're under the same regime as us in terms of the constitution, so they're basically an AFL-owned club.
They are.
But unlike us, Macca, they don't have an end date. We have 2028 in our constitution as our end date. They don't have an end date written into their constitution. They could be AFL-owned forever.
Well, yeah, because it's a subsidised club, that's why.
Well, there's no mechanism in their constitution to hand it back to the members.
Yeah, well, but if they handed back the members at the moment, they'd be bankrupt and they'd have to wind them up.
The funny thing about that is, mate, that they're always calling us the franchise. In 2028, hang on. In 2028, we won't be the franchise anymore because we'll be member owned, and the only franchise in town will be the blokes down the road.
They don't understand it. They do not understand that they are a franchise that is owned by the AFL. They don't seem to understand it. And because the SANFL sold off both those teams, just because of Port Adelaide was absolutely sending the SANFL broke. Wrote off 33 million that the SANFL had in the bank subsidising that outfit. Yep. They don't know. They never talk about that. That they're just a financial drain. Where will they go? They're a financial drain. Yeah. The only thing they've got over any other club is they've got more tarps.
Yeah, that's right. Izzy in the chat says, do you reckon the AFC will sever ties in 28? Well, Izzy, I think if the supporters demand it, it'll happen. And hopefully if CrowCast is still around in 2028, Mac, we'll be driving that just as hard as we drove the review a couple of years ago, because there's no way that I want the AFL to have any semblance of control over our club. And then we can actually start calling it a club. Then we can start having some independence. We can start having some transparency in terms of who's on the board. And at least then we can live and die by the sword instead of just being beholden to the AFL.
Couldn't agree with you more. It would be great not to be one of their pawns.
You know, I mean, for all intents and purposes, Macca, we're one of the few clubs that self-funded through the pandemic. We don't get handouts from them. We pay our own way. We're, I think, the 4th or 5th largest club in terms of memberships. We've done everything right. You know, we've done everything right. We drag crowds in. Our crowds travel. We have every right to be a standalone club, and I hope that the members and supporters get behind it in the lead up to that date. We certainly won't be letting anyone forget it, and hopefully we'll be able to get that done. If not in 2028, then not long after that. Hopefully we'll have a bloody club rooms by then as well.
Yeah, that's one thing that is bugging me is that, they were hoping to have it all tied up by June, and now, we're heading into, not far from heading into October, and we still haven't got it finalised. It's apparently some dicky little thing between, it was a contractual thing, I think, that's holding it up with the SAFL and that other team that plays in some lowly grade, where to position them. I don't know all the details of it, but it's just silly little sticking points at the moment rather than anything big. But
well, the SANFL have to move, right? So that's the sticking point, where they have to negotiate with a team that currently holds the ground that they want to move to.
Yes.
And I can't remember the club, but they've just about wiped Gazer out, so maybe they just moved to Gazer. Oh man, wasn't that a big massive whack over the head for a bloody salary cap breach. Jesus. What was it, 300,000 or something?
Yeah, well, they've got no chance of paying 300,000.
I mean, that's a big deal for a club that's been around forever, Gazer. That's basically wiped them out.
Yep.
Two Adelaide Crows champions from that club.
I was just going to raise that point.
Yeah.
The Jarman brothers.
The Jarman boys. You wonder whether the SANFL maybe fined them out of existence because they wanted their ground.
Yeah, well, it's not a bad ground. It used to have a trotting track around it, but it's my lads have played there, and it's not a bad ground at all.
Brownlow update. What are we up to? About round 17 or something? Yeah, 16 maybe. Lockie Neal on 23, Nick Dacos, Macca on 22, Petrarca on 21, Noah Anderson polling really well, 19, Cripps 17 with Bontempelli, Geordie's our best on 15, so going to get interesting.
Well, I reckon Dacos has only got probably 3 more rounds in which he is. Have they had round 16 or they're about to start round 16?
I can't tell from this feed, but I think they've had round 16.
If they've had round 16, he's only got about probably 3, maximum 4, probably more like 3, because he wouldn't have got injured in the other one. So, yeah, he's only got 3 more lots of votes that he could possibly get. So, yeah, I'm still sticking to he's written off.
Yeah. Now, the other teams in the finals, obviously St Kilda, probably benefited from a pretty soft early draw that got them into a good position, and then they were able to win enough games in the back half, but they were never really a threat, were they, Mac?
No, I agree.
And then you had who the other mob? Sydney, who were in there by stealth and took our spot, and
Exactly.
was very happy to see them get done by the GWS Giants. And I wonder whether we would have done any better, Mac.
Well, I think we would have played. I think we would have done better than them. I think because we were playing pretty. Well, yeah, it is speculation and also a little bit of bias on our part, I suppose. Yeah. Hats off to GWS though. I think GWS really should be playing in the grand final. If they had that apart from a couple of very glaring decisions that they weren't paid in that final quarter.
As usual, you jump the gun, Macca. You don't pick up what I put down. I'm going through them in order, so we'll get to GWS. Thank you very much.
Good idea, mate.
Good to see nothing's changed. Melbourne, probably along with Port, or I would say a bigger disappointment with than Port, to be honest with you. If you talk about expectations, Melbourne, there was always a chance that that Port were going to go out in straight sets, particularly after they lost their first one to Brisbane. But Melbourne would not have been expecting that outcome.
No, not at all. Not at all. In fact, they didn't lose by a lot in either of those situations. But again, it was really the lack of converting their opportunities, Pete.
Yeah, and they really do lack it's their Achilles heel, isn't it? The ability to kick enough goals.
Yeah, and it's probably one of the reasons why they're interested in McAdam, of course.
Yeah. Some talk about Kajitsky from Hawthorn as well, I think, but he's ended up going.
No. He's got. Where is he going to?
Essendon.
Yeah.
Essendon.
Okay.
You
might be right.
Lucky Neal still on 23 with Dacos on 22, Petrarca 21. Answer me this, Mac. Tex Walker had a blinder of a season. Second in the Coleman. Nowhere to be seen. Charlie Curnow, nowhere to be seen. We're back to it being a midfielder's medal again, aren't we? When Zach Merritt can poll 15 votes and Tex Walker's on, how much is Tex on?
10, I think. According to what somebody, Lardy Magic, has put up here.
Yeah, Tex is on 10. Jeremy Cameron on 11. don't know how that works. Where's Charlie Curnow? He's not in... Bloody hell, where is it? There he is. Charlie Curnow on 8.
Yeah, well, as you said it yourself, mate, it's a midfielder's medal. It always has been. It's, the umpires see them right at the beginning of the game, at the centre bounce. They see them racking up 30-odd stats, and they go in after the game, after getting booed off the ground. They go in there, they sit down. I don't know whether they do it straight away or not. And they think, now, who played well? And they'll just remember the blokes they saw a lot of.
But it's a bloody joke, Macca. This is the premier award in the competition for the best player in the competition, best and fairest over the course of the season.
Yep.
And we have 4 umpires, so they're all umpiring different parts of the ground. Why is it that a bloke like... And look, don't get me wrong, Lachie Neale's had a good season. Petrarca's had a really good season. Noah Anderson's been great. But there's been a ton of other key position players, halfback flankers, defenders that have had very, 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 very important seasons for their clubs that aren't even listed here. It's ridiculous.
But it's been this way ever since I can remember.
Let me put up one that I reckon is almost the most valuable player, the most important player, I think. Well, there's 2 I could put up, and they're both defenders. Harris Andrews for Brisbane,
great player,
and Darcy Moore for Collingwood.
Good player. Yeah.
Both of those blokes will be probably the most important, I think, in the grand final, and Harris Andrews has been a tower of strength for Brisbane over a long period of time. Where is he? He's not even on the bloody list.
I'll go along with very important, but I won't say the most important, because you got to win the ball out the middle, mate. That's the key, and you got to win it around. You also have to win it, get the clearances around the ground as well, and I think that's why it is a midfielder's medal, because
absolute bullshit.
Well, that's your opinion. I have a different one.
How many clean balls come out of the centre bounces? How many clean clearances are there compared to how many times it gets hacked out of there?
Yeah, but
so when it gets hacked out of there, what happens?
Well, then the rest of the play goes on. But
that's right, and it needs to be defended.
But it depends what part of the ground it is too.
You can get 10,000 centre clearances, mate. But if you don't put the score on the board, you don't win. And that's where defenders can be so important. And Harris Andrews was massive for Brisbane. And he's been massive for Brisbane throughout the course of his career. Well, as important, in my opinion, as Neil, Zorko, all those blokes. As important.
Look, I think, if you're going to win a flag, they are all equally important to some degree, to some level. But the game does start in the middle, and it starts around the clearances. But that's just my opinion. Because
you're a little midget rover. That's why.
Well, not midget, but I was a rover.
Yeah, midget. You were
a midget.
Midget rover. Little yappy little thing.
I was
away there.
Loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Look, I just think it's very simplistic to measure the best player for the season based wholly and solely on how many times he gets the ball.
I agree with that. It's the effectiveness of what happens with the ball. Some midfielders only need probably 22, 23 touches, and they can actually be the best person on the ground because of the way they use the ball.
Tim Taranto's got 16 votes, right? His disposal efficiency was down. His kicking efficiency was down at around 45% for the season. His kicking efficiency. That just tells.
He illustrates your point. He is one in your favour. Exactly. I totally agree. I think he is absolutely overrated. He is terrific at getting the ball, but he is probably one of the worst disposers of the ball in the whole competition.
Well, and if you want to talk about that, Christian Petrarca's
he
kicking
won.
efficiency isn't great either.
And it was a little bit off at times, but you take Merritt, for example. Merritt's a very good user of the ball. Dawson, generally a good user of the ball.
Yeah, although went off a little bit, Geordie.
He did in the last 2 or 3 games. I agree with that.
He
But
seemed to have a
generally
bit of a issue with his ball drop, I reckon.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. Look, and this is I guess that's my point, Mac. That you can get a lot of the ball, but if you don't use it efficiently, if you're not damaging with ball in hand, then, and that's where I think Bontempelli's had such a good season, because when he got the ball, and he got the ball in the clinches quite often or up forward, something happened. Something happened.
Oh, yeah. Look, yeah, it'd be interesting if you had a choice of picking one player out of the whole competition. Who would you take? He'd certainly be on the very, very short list that you'd be looking at.
Yeah. And then if you look at a guy like Tex Walker, and I'm only picking Tex out because it's an Adelaide podcast, there's a number of players that you could put in this. If you took Tex's 80 goals away from Adelaide's season, what sort of season do we have?
That's a good point.
Is there anyone else that there's no one else there that would just step in and kick those goals?
No. And we would get some, but we wouldn't probably only get about half of them.
You'd probably get half. You wouldn't get a left foot from outside 50 on the dummy. That's for sure.
What an unbelievable goal that was! But I think that's one of the best goals I've ever seen.
Yeah, should have gone close to goal of the year. Anyway, speaking of which, Will Ashcroft got goal of the year, and Elliot's brother Harry got mark of the year over Riley O'Brien.
Actually, Himmelberg actually took 2 screamers of mark of the year. So he could have qualified twice for it. So I'm not upset about that.
He took a belter in the gather round as well. I think it was at Norwood Oval. He took an absolute hang.
He did.
Up.
But Ashcroft's goal, I remember it quite clearly. He actually was in midair and kicked it while he was in midair. But that took a certain amount of skill and luck, I think. But I think Tex's goal was just such class to actually be a right footer, then dummy around and like a small man would onto his left and just power it through from outside 50. That's just unbelievable stuff.
Well, so here's how I would judge it if I'm being objective, and I'm probably not being 100% objective. But there's probably, I'd say, 20 players in the league that could have kicked that goal that Will Ashcroft kicked. 20 players in the league that are streaky enough to kick that goal, right?
I agree. Agreed.
I don't reckon there's more than about 2 or 3, and I can't even name one off the top of my head that would have been able to kick the goal that Tex kicked.
I was going to ask you to nominate anyone in any of the teams that could do that on his wrong foot and wheel around like that and do it like that. I'm struggling. I just can't think of one.
And to me, that makes a goal of the year. If you've done something that no one else can do in the competition, it's goal of the year. Surely.
Yeah, 100% agree there. I think he should have got it.
You know, even when Eddie won goal of the year with the one that he kept in on the boundary and then he snapped it in.
Yep.
Like, that was a really good goal, but that was probably worse of the 3 that he kicked out of there. That left foot torp that he kicked, that was a similar thing where there's probably maybe only 2 or 3 blokes that could in the league that could have done that.
Yep, I agree with that.
So, you know, Tex is, and I think even by us, Macca, and let's face it, he went through a lean period before his resurgence in the last couple of seasons, but severely underrated in terms of his natural footy ability, and the fact that a bloke that burns the ball as hard as Tim Taranto or Patrick Cripps or even Petrarca can pole like they're polling, and Tex sits there, where without him we probably don't contend for finals. That's how important he is. It just shows it's the flaw in the medal.
Well, look, yes, it is, because as as we've said, it's not necessarily the best. It says the best and fairest, but it's really the best and fairest midfielder.
It really is. When was the last time a ruckman won it? When was the last? Has a defender ever won it? You got to go back to the Ablett days and the Dunstall days and the Lockett days to have a forward win it.
Yep.
The only defender I can ever remember winning anything was Steve Voigt from Port winning the Magarey.
Yeah, it's rare, isn't it? It's rare. It really is rare. Occasionally you get the odd ruckman, and that used to be more in the old VFL days. They got a few ruckmen actually won it.
Yeah, Vardy puts forward Wanganeen. I guess he was playing back pocket, but he was playing a bit of midfield too, wasn't
he? Yeah. He did play. I thought with Port he was more attacking than he was with Essendon. He was playing back pocket at Essendon though.
When he won his Brownlow, yeah.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, so Vardy's right there.
Didn't think he deserved it.
No, well, I'm with you, but he got it though. So
Vardy, it's a bit like bloody Shane Woden that year. Oh my god, what a stinker!
Oh my god, he's possibly one of the worst people I can ever remember winning one. Actually,
Vardy also puts up. Neil gets 3 votes in the game v GWS with a 20 disposal game. Charlie kicked 7. Kelly had 41 touches and Caniglio had 38.
There's been a lot of generosity towards Lachie Neale in this vote.
Very much so. Very much so.
There's a lot of games where I thought he played a reasonably good game, but not necessarily a vote game.
No,
and 23 touches for a midfielder. To get 3, no, that's not on.
Anyway, so we'll keep going. Obviously, we've talked about Port. We've talked about Melbourne. Carlton made a very good account of themselves this year. They probably the team in the 8 that can be satisfied with, or not satisfied, but like if you want to talk about honourable losses in final series, that's Carlton probably.
Well, if you compare where they come from last year to what they've done this year, it's been a massive improvement. And so they would have to be not satisfied, because you're never satisfied unless you get the number 1 spot. But I'd have to say it was a massive improvement on the previous year, and a good sign for next year and other years to come, because they're not necessarily an old team. They do have a couple of old players, but of course they've got a lot of like mid-range players in the 25, 26, 27s. So they're very much in the window at the moment.
Yeah, they are. They've got a couple of little holes. Cripps isn't getting any younger, so that's a bit of a concern. They've obviously got firepower up forward, and defensively they're quite strong. So, they've got a good package, Mac, and I think they're going to be around the mark. Voss has obviously improved as a coach. They're playing for him, and I tell you what, at quarter time of the prelim, it looked like they were going to play Collingwood in the final.
Yeah, they sure did. I mean, when they got the first 5 goals of the game, and I thought, by God, what's going to happen here? But, that was it virtually. Just back on Port, we didn't actually discuss what we think their future's like for next year, mate.
Well, I don't want to talk about it just yet, because I haven't finished doing this little bit.
Well, we've gone past it.
Just wait a little bit. Just wait a minute.
Okay.
And GWS, the fairy tale, obviously, and that preliminary final against Collingwood, probably game of the season, I think. It was an absolute cracker.
Well, it was. It really was. And, I still think that they were robbed, GWS. I mean, for example, that player there was a collision, and one of their small forwards went down who had been having a cracker of a game.
Toby Green.
No, it wasn't Toby Green.
Toby Green got one high that he didn't get paid.
Yeah, that was a free. No, this one, the AFL doctor made him come off and have a concussion test which you could see it.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
It wasn't that much of a blow, but he was critical because he was actually firing on all cylinders. And
well, I don't think that's right, though, Macca, because the AFL doctor can't order them to come off. The AFL doctor advises them. And unfortunately, what happened, and you could see Kingsley going off at their doctor, at the GWS doctor, because unfortunately, GWS's doctor complied with the AFL doctor's recommendation.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So GWS should have ignored them the same way Port Adelaide did with Alir and the other bloke.
Yeah, but you saw what happened to Port afterwards. They got the threat of the next team that does it, 100,000 fine. So yeah, it was unfortunate. Yeah, I just thought that GWS Collingwood got all the rub of the green, and GWS they got the reverse.
Yeah, and look, played at the MCG in front. I mean, wasn't that crowd massive? 96,000 or whatever it was, and quite a decent representation of GWS fans under the circumstances. But bloody hell, I mean, there's probably a case for the umpires to wear bloody the same earmuffs that they wear at the Formula One to block out the crowd noise, to be honest with you, because I'd defy any human being not to be swayed by that crowd noise. I mean, it's impossible, Macca. It's impossible.
Well, we had 80,000 Collingwood supporters and about 5,000 GWS. So you're quite right. I mean, just any decision given to GWS was met with boos and abuse. And, and if GWS missed out on theirs, well, so what?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, we go on about umpire impartiality and all the rest of it. We've got to remember they're human beings. And yes, there is some dodgy stuff that goes on and some questionable stuff that goes on. But if you want to talk about not getting influenced by 80 or 90,000 people screaming at you, I mean, that's humanly impossible. And until we invent robots that can umpire the game, that's just not going to happen.
Well, exactly right.
So Nick Dacos has made his run. He's on 28, but I think he can only poll in one or two more games. Petrarca on 25, Neil on 24, Anderson doing very well, 22. Crits and Bontempelli on 19, not out of it. And then the rest, I think. Bontempelli want to get a bit of a wriggle on now, but I think this is probably when his run starts.
Yeah, what round are we up to, I think?
17, I think we've just done.
17. Well, Dacos could get another couple yet. Theoretically, I don't know whether he played well enough or not, off memory, but 24 rounds, and he missed last four. He was injured in the one before that. So he can get votes up to and including round 19.
Yeah. Baxter's just said on chat, Jason Horne-Francis got a 3 vote from a game with 13 disposals and 2 clearances.
You are joking. You are joking.
Oh, jeez. All right, so we've done round 18, so we're up to 19 now.
Well, round 19, and I think this is the last chance for Dacos to get votes.
There you go. So you mentioned, the future of teams. Obviously, Collingwood and Brisbane are in the middle of their window, so that's fine. Carlton are just entering a window. I'd expect, barring some sort of catastrophe, Macca, they'd be around for a while. Melbourne's an interesting one because they do have holes, Mac, in my opinion.
Well, it's interesting because I think they just got too smart for themselves.
I think they play arrogantly. I think since their premiership, they've been quite arrogant about how they've operated. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, they were operating very well as they were, and then they got Grundy, and I don't think anybody who really, really studied football very closely, you wonder. Max Gawn is a dominant player, and you want him in the ruck about 80-90% of the time, and he can even rest him then in the forward line if necessary to get a spell. and just bring up one of your forwards to do the rest of the work for the other 10% of the game. Yeah. Getting Grundy actually set them back and actually completely sort of changed the way they played.
Yeah, and they carried on that experiment for quite a number of games.
Too long, and then they try to get other players to play to role play, but it just they didn't look. If they'd gone one way right at the beginning without Grundy, I just think they would have been a lot more dangerous. Put it that way. And sometimes you can outsmart yourself, and I think they did.
I think so. I honestly think so. I think they don't have the same solid coverage around the ground as Carlton do, in my opinion. They're a bit soft up forward, and even with the addition of McAdam, we know that he has trouble staying on the park. He's a mature age player, and he's a bit flighty. He can come in and kick you three, but he might go missing for a couple of weeks as well. I think they need a tool for, like Ben Brown obviously was a bit of a loss going into the finals. He's reasonably solid, but he's getting on too, and he has trouble staying on the park. They just lack a solid, dependable key forward, don't they?
Well, Van Rooyen is their future. There's no doubt about that, and I think he will be a reasonably good player in time. And if they'd surround him with another tall as well at that particular stage rather than Grundy, in other words, a genuine forward.
Yeah.
And that was their mistake.
Yeah.
It really cost them.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. And then Port. I think Port are in trouble, mate. Well, Port are what we were when we had McLeod, Rashudo, Goodwin, Edwards, Ian Perry at centre half forward.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's about where I was going to make the same point. They've got this mighty midfield. There's not much to get excited about either side of it.
That's the thing, that they've loaded up big time on their midfield, and fair enough. As the mighty Macca says, the game's won and lost in the midfield, Mac. But Port Adelaide's a case in point of how that's absolutely not true.
Well, if you
that just came to me while I was saying it.
Well, it sounds good. It sounds good. But if you have a look at when Port were successful, that's when they got on top of the midfield and they could lock it in their forward line with repeat entries till they eventually scored, because they don't have the individual brilliance to do it like a lot of other teams can do by one entry. Where you see that a lot of Port games where they end up winning was just locking it across, doing very well in the midfield and then just locking it in so that eventually they get a shot at goal and get a goal. And that's because Dixon, he's not much good. I'm going to say that he's always injured. He's always carrying an injury, so you never see him playing at his best, whatever that might be. In their centre half forward, he had the yips for kicking for goal. I think he's as soft as. Sam Powell-Pepper was probably their bloody best forward, actually.
Certainly most consistent, but he had a stinker of a final series. Todd Marshall had a stinker of a final series.
Marshall, that's what I was thinking of, yeah.
Marshall was terribly disappointing. He needed to stand up, and I think he was injured. If he didn't have a jab somewhere to make him kick like he did in that game, I don't know what was going on, because he couldn't kick it. He couldn't kick the ball. So I don't know with Port. I think their midfield keeps them in the conversation for a finals appearance, Macca, but I actually think they've got a little bit of a reset to do with their list configuration to be a genuine finals threat, to be honest with you.
What they are doing, they're trying to allure as many tall defenders as possible, because they were definitely undermanned, undersized down back. And that's why they were always vulnerable, and also lacking a little bit of quality as well. And I don't know. The two guys they're bringing in are still iffy guys in the sense that they can have a good game or they can play a very ordinary game. So it'll be a partial answer, but not the total answer. I think they've missed their window. That's what I think.
Well, who they got in? They got Radaglia wants to come in. Who's the other bloke? Zach Thatcher, who was talked about with us for a while, but we weren't really interested. And there's one more, isn't there, that's coming in?
No. The other one that they were after was Grundy, and he's not coming.
That's right. Yep. So I mean,
there's one more. They were smiling us out in the chat. Jordan Sweet.
Jordan Sweet, that's right. A ruckman, yeah. A mature age ruckman. Goes all right too. Probably been held back by probably a top 2 ruckman in the comp in English. So they need to invest some time in their young ruckman. That young lad, he's a bloody good ruckman in the making, in my opinion. So it'd be interesting to see whether Sweet's just a backup situation or whether they actually favour him over the young lad.
You're talking about, is that Vicente?
Yeah, Vicente or whatever his name is.
I think Italian name, something like that. And I can see a lot of promise in that kid.
100%. I think they've found someone in Lord up forward, Mac.
Will be a player. He's not going to be a prolific ball getter, but he's a sort of type of player. But if you get 3 or 4 kicks, he'll probably kick you some goals. That's one thing about him. And the day that he kicked the 4 goals, he didn't have many other possessions, but he's dangerous enough anyhow.
Yep. I don't think that'll... Sorry?
It's just starting to tighten up in the middle, mate. It's just starting to tighten up.
Yeah, no, I'm watching it. Dacos on 28, Petrarca 26 now, Neil 24, Anderson 22. Bontempelli want to get his skates on 21, and young Goulden, who I reckon's a Brownlow winner of the future, mate. I'd almost be putting money on him for next year. On 20, he just gets so much of the ball.
How good is he? Gee, I'd love to have a player like him in our side.
Yeah. Servos talks about Georgiadis. He's been a bit forgotten, obviously, with his long-term injury that he's had this year. Has been, always like the look of Mitch, but has been a bit flaky. So, and always whispers about him wanting to go back to WA. And with the WA teams both hanging out for a bit of forward strength, there might be a bit of a lure there.
He has signed on.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about necessarily next year, but in the not too distant future.
Well, I also agree he is flaky. I mean, he'll have a day on where he'll take 2 or 3 great grabs, and then you'll have the games you'll think, did he play?
Yeah, exactly. So I reckon still between 5 and 10 for Port Adelaide next year. Yeah,
I think you're right. I don't think they'll be top 4. I think you're right.
I don't think they'll be top 4, Mac. Between 5 and 10, because they got a fairly easy draw this year. They got a fairly easy draw, and you would think that finishing where they did, their draw won't be that easy again. I could see them dropping out of the 8.
Just looking at that list, Bontempelli just flying up there, mate.
Well, 21, yeah.
No, 24 now.
Oh, okay. My thing hasn't refreshed. Let me just refresh it.
Yeah, and 26 to Petrarca, 28 to Dacos. Well, Dacos is 28. He's locked in. They're going to go past him.
Yeah, Dacos I don't think he can get any more. So, Bontempelli with the predicted late run.
Yep.
St Kilda, I think, are most vulnerable in the out of the teams in the 8. I really think that they benefited very much from their early draw. And they just haven't really got any star power, have they? They're just a good, solid workman-like team. Ross Lyon will make it difficult to score. But they're not going to be a threat.
No, look, I agree with you. They've got a lot of grunt in them, but that's it, and but not a lot of finesse. Not a lot of finessing.
No.
It's absolutely typical Ross Lyon team.
Yeah, just a workman. The difference between the last St Kilda team that he coached and this one is that last time he had a couple of absolute champions.
Yes, he did.
And they're lacking those champions this time around.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. And Jacob Steele, who always been a star, he got injured and he came back and he was very ordinary in the second half of the year. Look, he might get back to his good form and lift them up a bit higher, but I can't see them as a premiership team.
No, not at all. And I dare say they don't either. They might be active. Teams out of the 8 that are a threat, Macca, it's an interesting one because it was one of the most even seasons in memory, really, with teams all the way down to 12 still in with a hunt with a couple of games to go. So there's a lot of pressure from underneath, and a lot of it I think will depend on the draw that teams get.
Well, for a team that finished where we did last year, we got a shocking draw by comparison.
Terrible draw.
If the AFL don't hate Adelaide, I'll go he for Heidi. Seriously.
Well, it's all algorithmic, but we certainly got the rough end of the stick. So you would imagine we wouldn't cop that 2 years in a row. And it wasn't just about the double ups that we had, because we had double ups against all the top 4 teams. But it was also the venues that we played. We played in every bloody regional centre known to man. If they'd have scheduled a game on Christmas Island, we probably would have gone and played there as well.
Yeah, actually, an interesting thing about GWS, I think that, I can't remember whether it was 11 or 13 different grounds they played on for the year.
Yeah. So I think the biggest threats to the 8 next year are ourselves, and I'm going to say Gold Coast, Macca.
Well, I know I was going to say Gold Coast too. So we're so far we're at 1 thing.
You can make a case for the Western Bulldogs, but my prediction is that Beveridge might be gone halfway through next season.
Well, I think that they've got the players here to be a very good side. I don't like their coach one little bit, and I don't think that they will be talking about them as premiership material at all unless they get rid of Beveridge. I know he got a premiership game back a few years back, but that was just one of those years where it all went his way. But I think the performance this year with the team they've got, and they've got some very talented players in their side. Yeah, they underperformed, absolutely underperformed.
Yeah, I think so. They just had that little lull. Who else have we got? Richmond, I think, are in a bit of a rebuild, so it might take them a couple of years to contend again. Fremantle, Fremantle's list just seems a mess to me. I just don't like. They play well at times, and other times they look like an absolute bloody rabble. So
I think it's easy to describe in one word, Pete. Darcy. When Darcy plays, they look good.
Yeah, that's true.
Because that means he's the main ruckman, and that allows the other one to play up forward. And they've got good midfielders. But yeah, as soon as Darcy went down, they went, because at that stage they were travelling not too badly. But then when Darcy went down, no good at all.
So I have to say that, in my opinion, Mac, the 2 most vulnerable teams in the 8 are St Kilda and Port Adelaide.
Correct.
You could say Sydney, but they just have a habit, don't they? And the 2 most likely are ourselves and Gold Coast.
Yeah, we're not even going to have a debate because I agree with both outs and both ins.
Well, the fool's gold for me for this season to offset the bad draw, the fool's gold for me is Tex. That's what I worry about. He's another year older. Every year older, he gets more susceptible to soft tissue injuries. And as I mentioned when we were talking about the relative value of certain players, we haven't got another forward on our books that replaces that amount of goals.
No, we don't.
For us to push, into finals contention, we need there's some younger players now that have been on the list for a little while that need to now establish themselves as best 22.
Yep, I agree with that.
And the head one for me is Riley Thilthorpe, Macca.
100%. You're informed tonight, mate. You're really calling it well.
Well, you've taken your agreeing pill, so that's nice. The side effects include potty mouth.
Oh, Jesus, Finn, you give me a hard time, mate. No, actually, I think you struck the right nerve there again. That's the guy that's got to step up and become a really, really top player, not just a good player. He's got the talent, he's got the ability, he can do it. He's just got to believe it himself and do it.
Well, I mean, let's remember it's his third season next season. But he needs now to start influencing games. My question to you, Macca, is where do we play him?
Well,
fourth season. Sorry, Vardy.
Yeah, look, this is very contentious, but he really should be our ruckman.
Mate, I'm agreeing with you on this one.
And resting up forward. You know, he should really be, because he'd be long term. He should be our ruck. You know, he should be starting it next year, and he should be the main ruckman. It's not. I know they're not going to do it because they've got O'Brien, but it just messes up the whole structure to me, in my opinion. Because
I agree with you.
Riley has to develop, and the only way he's going to develop is to do it. It's very much like the lad down at Essendon. I mean, he was thrown to the wolves when he wasn't quite ready, but he just grew and grew and grew, and just got better and better and better, and turned into a good ruckman. And that's what will happen with Thilthorpe if he's given that opportunity.
I agree with you, Mac. It's to me, it's obvious. If you've got a 200 centimetre plus player that can play as well as he does below his knees and has pretty reasonable disposal, just with some decision making to brush up on, and tends to mark better when he's running up the ground. He seems to, when the ball's sat on his head, he's not quite so good. But when he's running to the ball, even in contested situations, he does well. I just think you want a bloke like that around the ball as much as possible. That's the main reason why I want him to play in the ruck, because I just want him involved as much as possible.
Yeah, and look, O'Brien, he is 100% giver, but he gives 100% of what he's got. But what he's got is not 100% of what you really need. He just hits the ball. He doesn't necessarily tap it to a man. He doesn't take a lot of marks around the ground. He's just not. I mean, when you look at blokes like English, Marshall, they're an extra player around the ground as apart from being a very good ruckman. So,
yep.
And that's what we want Thilthorpe to develop into, an English and a Marshall. That's what we want.
And what we haven't seen a lot of as a result of him being played up forward so much, we haven't seen a lot of Thilthorpe behind the ball, Mac. Getting into defensive positions and taking defensive marks. And, he needs to be that guy that can come in and play a tall position, drop into the hole at critical times. To me, I don't expect him to have a standout champion season, but I expect him to take a very good step. I hope that the club release the shackles, take him out of that forward zone, and play him in the middle, at least for long periods of time. And what that means for Riley O'Brien, I don't know. Particularly if we do get Chol in, Macca, because Chol is a capable second ruck / forward.
Absolutely. I think what would happen is O'Brien would still be in the 22 next year, but I would think that if it went to plan and they did actually give Thilthorpe a very, very good opportunity during the whole of the year, there would be a situation that we might even get to the point where we could trade Riley O'Brien.
Well, absolutely. And, we've got, I would have even been in favour of playing Elliott with with as a backup to Riley, to be honest with you, particularly with Elliott's second half of the season form, very good ruck work in particular, good enough. And I don't think any. I think between Chol and Elliott's best, there's not a lot of difference. The trouble is they're both flaky as hell, and you can't rely on them. But as second options, they're not bad. And I think enough with Riley playing up forward, Riley playing in the ruck, to be able to consider letting Rob go.
Yep, totally agree.
Yep. The other blokes that I think need to stand up, if given the opportunity, Macca, if given the opportunity, is Lukey Pedler. Needs to have a massive off-season to build that tank.
Now Pedler, he really does have to have a huge off-season, and I don't know whether the club's got any particular schedule for him or just letting him do the normal thing. I would be sort of arranging something very special for him to build up his tank, because he should be an on-baller next year. He should be in the middle.
Yes, well, I mean, this begs the question, and we'll get to that in a minute, about opportunity, because there's a few blokes that need opportunity. We've talked about Lukey Pedler. We need to talk about Joshua Shelley, who's another one, I think, that now that he needs to now step up. But will they get the opportunity, Mac?
I agree, and Rochelle must get that same opportunity as well. They must. Yeah.
Errol Goulden just up to 26 votes. That's massive.
And so is Bontempelli. it just happened.
I'll tell you what, Errol Goulden could absolutely swipe this.
He just might. There's 28 Dacos is hanging in there, and there's a round to go after this. Bontempelli, Goulden, and Petrarch all on 26. My God. Lockie Hill just got 3. Hang on, what does that do?
That puts him equal. That puts him equal with Dacos.
My Godfather, this is a hell of a good game.
Zach Butters has snuck up too.
Yeah, he comes
Zach
blind.
Butters on 24.
Yeah, well, he can't win it, of course. There's only one round to go.
Yeah, no, but
but you've got a situation now that you've got equal joint winners at the moment, and 3 guys that could snipe them. Oh, my God, this last round is going to be huge.
Have they finished the counting of the second last round?
Yeah, yep.
Oh, boy.
This is a classic.
Yeah, Goulden out of the clouds.
God, he's good, that boy. I mean, his athletic ability is unbelievable.
He had a good... Who did they play in the last... Who did they play in the last round? He had a good game in that last round too, didn't he?
I think he did. He could be the. What if the 3 of them got 3?
Oh God. Anyway, while we're waiting for that, Soligo's another one that needs to get time. I think Rankin's another one that needs to get time in the middle.
Yep.
You know, it's such a shame that we're not talking about Harry Schoenberg because he would have been another one. But I really worry about him now with that Achilles, mate. He's got a year on the sidelines potentially, and coming back from an Achilles is not easy work.
Yeah, well, it is sad about that, because does that mean he won't play at all next year?
Well, I mean, it remains to be seen, but a ruptured Achilles can be that long.
Yeah, he didn't need it because he was actually finding form, sadly.
Yeah, and, potentially a year on the sidelines, losing all that fitness because he can't do anything. It's going to be a long way back for him, unfortunately. Sam Bear is the other one that wouldn't have enjoyed Matt Crouch's extension.
Barry went backwards, unfortunately. I did watch the SANFL finals where the Crows were in, and again, I thought Barry played reasonably well, actually. Kicking let him down on occasions. Slightly better with his kicking, but yeah, I just don't think he's going to be the long-term answer, Fane.
No, well, you keep saying that, and I keep disagreeing with you, so let's not argue about it. But I don't know whether he'll be the long-term answer at Adelaide, because I don't think he's going to get the opportunities, to be honest with you.
I think the other boys have got more talents, overall talents, more all-round talents. I mean, Barry's got fantastic aggression and all that type of stuff, and he's a good tackler, etc., etc. But we need movement of the ball.
Mate, you don't know what you're talking about. Sam Berry will run through contests much better than Matt Crouch ever will. He's got a solid core. He runs through contests all the time. He runs through congestion all the time. It's absolute bollocks what you're saying.
Well, we will always disagree on that, so I'm not going to get into that.
You just need to go back and watch some footage and remind yourself, because you're allowing your love of Matt Crouch to blind your opinion of Sam Berry.
No, I'm not. I'm judging Berry on his own. Now it's going to get interesting for the next 3 games, because that's about all that's left coming up.
So I'm not watching it. So
right.
give us
Sydney Swans and Melbourne. Here's a good one. Sydney Swans, Melbourne.
Geez, Zach Butler's got up to 27 votes. Bloody hell.
Yeah, Jesus. Gooden got 1 vote. So he
have like 40 touches or something in that last game.
So he's up to 27, I think.
What the hell?
Rich got...
Yeah, Gilden's 27.
Rich got 2. And Viney got the 3. So Petrarca can't win. That's 1 scene off. There we've got the Western Bulldogs. Geelong. Lob got 1. This is the big one. Liberatore got 2. Is it going to be the Bont? They're holding it. It's Bontempelli, 29. He'll be the winner. Now, what games have got to come? Are there any more games? Brisbane Lions versus St Kilda. So, Lockie Neal. Can Lockie Neal do it? Kitty Coleman got 1. Good player, that boy. Beautiful kick.
Neal will be best on ground, I reckon.
Wanganeen Miller got 2.
Oh.
And they're holding. And Lockie Neal got 3 and wins it.
Wins it by 1.
No, I do not reckon he was the best player in the comp for the year.
There you go. Let me just read you something, Macca. Errol Gilden, final round against Melbourne. 142 fantasy points. He had 42 touches, 27 kicks, 15 handballs, 5 marks and a tackle. He kicked 2 goals.
Oh yeah, look, I saw the game. He was best on ground. He was best.
And he got 572 metres gained, and he got 1 vote.
Yeah.
1 vote. That's Andrew McLeod levels of ripped off.
Oh, Andrew got 3 games in a row at the end of the season. Last 3 games he got cheated.
Bloody hell.
So Lockie Neal, well, as I say, I watch every game. I would say that he'd had a reasonably good season. I didn't think it was a Brownlow Medal season.
No, I didn't either, to be honest with you.
But he beat some very good performers. It just goes to show that Dacos would have bolted in without injury.
I got to say, I'm very, very disappointed for Marcus Bontempelli. Actually, like, if you have a look at his last 6 games, 2-0, 3-0, 2-3, probably didn't poll as well as what you'd expect. A couple of those 2s could have easily been 3s, I reckon.
Oh yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. So it's definitely stiff, not to be at least a joint on.
But bloody Goulden should have. I mean, Goulden wouldn't have won it, as it turns out. But Jesus, that sort of that's an Andrew McLeod game for one vote. Unbelievable.
Well, that was a very good count. I've got to say that very good tense count there at the end. And look, all good players, but Neil's just a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah, you can't argue with any of the top half a dozen. Jack Viney is probably a bit of a surprise, being as high.
Did have a very good year though, and he got a lot of votes when Oliver was out.
Yeah, I guess. So let's have a look at Adelaide's tally. So Geordie Dawson ended up with 20 votes. Rory Laird also with 20 votes. Tex Walker with 16. I just don't understand. Like the thing with this voting with Tex is that he had 1, 2, 3, 4 best on grounds and 2 second best on grounds. But how many times would he have been like worthy of one vote? Plenty of times in those games. And then it tails off quite dramatically. Mac Rankin at 7, Fogarty at 3, O'Brien at 3, Keys at 2, Sloan at 2. I can't recall Sloan's.
Fogarty at 3, Keys 2, Sloan 2, Philthorpe 2, Smith 1, and Saligo 1.
And I think this is probably where my worry sits. And I know this isn't an indicator, but it probably does illustrate that there's still a gap between our senior veteran players and our juniors. And this is where I think, you got blokes like Pedler and Saligo and Riccelli. They've still got some miles to put in the legs. There is a danger for us to tread water next year, I reckon, or even, depending on Texas form, to go a little bit backwards, Mac.
Yeah, there is, because of the senior player situation. But you would hope that blokes like Saligo and Philthorpe, Pedler, etc., that they would go to another level, not the ultimate level, but to another level, because it is a situation with teams that when they're with young players, they every time they add another 10, 20 games onto their list, they should be improving to another level. So I would hope that, and I think, I mean, Rankin, he was good for us, but I think he can do even better.
I think Rankin's season was actually a little bit underrated, Mac. I think the thing that surprised me about Isaac was his hardness around the contest.
He is.
That's something that I didn't expect to get from him. I thought we were getting a streaky goal kicker. But he really impressed me with his work around the ball.
Well, yeah, I think you could use him a lot more on the ball, actually. Riccelli, he's got to go to another level, and I think he can. Saligo, I think he's a guy that keeps improving each year. So I'm optimistic. I would love to see us be able to recruit a good backman, because unfortunately, our best backman's not going to be available till much, much later in the year.
I just think I know there's probably no one on the market anymore, but geez, it would be nice to have another 24, 25-year-old midfielder.
Oh, bloody oath it would. It really would.
We're just crying out for one.
Yeah. Just a little point. What did you think of the re-signing of Sloan?
We've already talked about all of that.
Yeah, I was going to line it up with Boak for Port. It's like Bambi in each side, I reckon. Nobody wants to be the one that shot Bambi.
Yeah. Well, they haven't re-signed Boak yet, have they?
Well, I think what they've done is, Boak's been so long, he wants to play on next year, Port finally come out and said that they've offered a contract to Boak. And Boak's response to that has been that I'll have to go away and think about it for a couple of weeks. That tells you very clearly he's been offered bugger all money, and he's been told there's a chance that you could be not just the sub. He might even be playing SANFL next year as well, if necessary. I reckon that. I think that he wanted a contract. He's been offered a contract, so it's obviously poor money and not going to be necessarily on the ground all the time.
So that's very different to how we've treated Rory.
Oh no, we treated our Bambi too nicely, I think.
You could say that Port have handled that situation reasonably well, considering Travis wanted to play on. They've basically, forced him to make a decision. You can play on if you like, but it's going to be on our terms, not yours. Whereas, in my opinion, Sloane has been allowed to play on Sloane's terms instead of the club's. And that's the key difference, Macca.
Well, that's what we see on paper, and I hope it's not that. But, I mean, it's certainly the impression you get. But Sloane should realise, he was made sub probably, 3 times towards the end of the year?
We're not going to have this long conversation about Sloane again because we've done it to death. The comparison between Boak and Sloane is, I think that Port have done it better under the circumstances than Adelaide have done.
Oh, I'm not going to argue with that.
Yeah. All right, mate. Well, look, thanks to everyone who's joined us. We had, under the circumstances, a pretty good viewing audience. Thanks to everyone on YouTube who have lobbed in, and also the dozen or so on Discord who came in and had a listen. If you're listening during the week, don't forget to give us a like and subscribe on YouTube or a review on iTunes. Mac, we've got, I reckon, a couple to go. We'll probably have a rest until the draft and trade period. But to round off, let's just spend a couple of minutes talking about the grand final coming up, because I think it's going to be my personal view is it's either going to be a belter or it's going to be an absolute blowout, and it all depends on which Brisbane turns up.
It's an interesting situation, isn't it? Because if you line up the two teams, apart from the fact that Collingwood have got the home ground advantage, and they've got to have the crowd advantage and probably get an umpiring advantage. But if you just line the two teams up purely as teams, to me, Brisbane have got so much more talent than Collingwood have. Collingwood have
really?
Yes, I think in actual pure talent. What Collingwood have got, what Collingwood have got is very dedicated players that give 100%, and they never ever give up. Never ever give up. They just keep going and going and going, and that's what's won them so many games. Not by necessarily being the best skillful team out there, but just by sheer persistence and effort. And like a bloke like Markov probably wouldn't get in most other sides. He certainly would get in Brisbane's side, for example.
Brisbane's got Markov. I mean, Collingwood have got a lot of talent, Mac. They got the two Dacos boys. They've got Jamie Elliott up front who can kick goals from anywhere and win things off his own boot. They got Jordan DeGoey, who had a fantastic match against GWS.
But I agree with the comment. No, because the comment in the chat, which is exactly where I was coming from. The Lions have got the better midfield and they got the better forward line. You look at Collingwood's forward line now. McStay was the difference between winning and losing against the Giants, and he's out injured, so he won't be playing. And I just think the Collingwood are light on up forward. I know that it is very hard to beat Collingwood because it's a team where not one, not two, but the whole 22 give 100% all the time. There's nobody ever doesn't try in Collingwood, and the effort will be 100%. Now, if Brisbane can actually match that effort, then I think they've got more talent and they can win the game. That's how I see it. But I think they definitely have got better players overall. If you just line up every line, every position, etc. Now that doesn't mean to say that Collingwood haven't got some winning positions. I just think that on balance, Brisbane have got more.
Yeah, it's an interesting call, Mac. I can agree with certain aspects of what you're saying. They're definitely a hard-working team that never gives up and never stops running. Probably one of the hardest running teams, along with GWS, probably in the comp, which is why that preliminary final was such a classic, because neither team stopped at any point. I think you've got to give Collingwood a lot of credit for actually getting past GWS's midfield, because GWS's midfield was on song in the final series and probably for the last half a dozen games of the year. And that I would rate the Giants' midfield probably second to Collingwood's in strength at the moment. So I don't know, mate. The problem with Brisbane for mine is that and we saw it in the first quarter against Carlton, they can be scored against very quickly. If you take Harris Andrews out of the equation, they can get scored against very, very quickly, mate. Because their midfield isn't that fast.
No, it's not. I agree with that. But they do have, even then when they take their main blokes out of the centre, they've still got a lot of others that can fill in there very, very neatly. Collingwood really, De Goey almost carried Collingwood over the line, didn't he? He was outstanding in the middle. If De Goey had gone off injured or something like that, no Collingwood, that's for sure.
No, I disagree with that.
Well, I thought he was absolutely dominant.
He was dominant, but that doesn't mean to say that others wouldn't have been had he not been there.
Yeah, I'm just saying that I think if you line up the players individually, I just think overall more talent in Brisbane, but that doesn't mean to say they will win the game. It'll be because they have to match that absolutely dedication and determination that exists in every Collingwood player. So that's where it sits. If Brisbane can bring it out and match that, then they'll win the game because they've got the talent.
That's I'm picking Collingwood easily, to be honest with you, because I don't trust Brisbane at all. I don't agree with your talent assessment. I do agree with your statement about Collingwood's work rate. For Brisbane to have any chance to win, they have to have the right mindset, and that includes the coach, Macca. And there's probably a few doubts about Fagan's coaching ability in tight situations, given that it's taken him 3 or 4 goes to get to the GF. So I think on balance, I'm thinking the Collingwood Magpies get up comfortably.
Well, I think that most people will be picking Collingwood, but I'll stick with what my belief is, that I believe that Brisbane, and I know that Brisbane only won one of their last 18 at the MCG too, which is not a great thing to recommend them as well. So, whereas for Collingwood, it's just their home ground and where they play every year, all year. But in spite of that, I still think that there is enough talent in Brisbane if they can actually put it all together, and it is an if they can put it all together and match the physicality of Collingwood, then I think they can win the game. And for that reason, I'm going to select them on the basis that they will. But I will be wrong.
There you go. I'll be interested in the comments during the week, Mac, who's barracking for who. I'll certainly be barracking for Brisbane, because you always got to barrack for the interstate team, or the non-Victorian team, I should say. So I'll certainly have my Lions scarf on. My folks up there in Queensland, they'll be barracking for the Lions and the Broncos. So they're either going to have a very good or a very bad week.
Well, that's true.
They had a pretty good weekend last weekend. So yeah, I'll have my Lions beanie on, that's for sure. So we will see. And as I mentioned, we will be back with our next podcast coming up to the trade period, which is, I can't remember the dates, but keep an eye on the socials and we'll post up what date that is, and we'll have a bit of a deeper dive back into the squad and what the permutations are, and a little bit more of an informed analysis than tonight's little chat, although tonight's been good as well, and I'm sure there'll be a bit more stuff in the wind by the time we get together again.
Yeah, I think that's the difference. At the moment, everything's sort of being under wraps because everybody's waiting for the grand final to be out the way, and after that, then I think it'll be on for young and old, and there'll be stuff coming out the woodwork everywhere.
Beautiful. All right, thanks to everyone who's joined us tonight. Stay safe, and we will see you again in a couple of weeks. Good night, everyone.
Okay, good night all.